Good afternoon. His Excellency Sebastian Pinera, President of the Republic of Chile, and distinguished guests all. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Canadian Council for the Americas. Y una calurosa bienvenida a todos nuestros amigos chilenos. Gracias por estar con nosotros. Mr. President, the story of the relationship between our two countries is unique and instructive. It is a story of how peoples at opposite ends of the hemisphere have created a close friendship based on common values and the will to act on those values. During much of our history together, our two countries enjoyed a cordial but limited relationship. Although Chile posted a vice consul to Vancouver in 1889, full diplomatic relations were only established in 1944. Following World War II, our focus was elsewhere. Chile concentrated on accelerating its economic and internal development, while Canada looked towards its northern partners with only the stirring of interest in Latin America in the late 1960s. That changed during the 1970s and the 1980s, during Chile's struggle to restore democracy and human rights. Canadian governments, both liberal and conservative, along with Canadian NGOs, extensively engaged Chilean civil society to assist in a nonviolent transition. Under Canadian auspices, opportunities were created for responsible voices to meet, minimizing the risk of associating with one another. Ottawa's International Development Research Center and CETA established and promoted the international visibility of important think tanks and NGOs inside Chile. Canada welcomed many of Chile's best and brightest. But our governments did not see eye to eye, and there was no pretense to have it appear otherwise. But this changed dramatically with the restoration of democracy. And building upon the foundation of trust and friendship forged during the difficult era, our peoples and governments have collaborated extensively on geopolitical, economic, cultural, and educational matters, both bilaterally and in multilateral fora. Our leaders meet frequently and with purpose. We continue to collaborate on furthering the fundamental values of liberal democracy and human rights. It is no coincidence that two of the most important hemispheric declarations of democratic principles, the Santiago Commitment to Democracy in 1991 and the Quebec City Declaration of 2001, were born in our respective cities. The commercial collaboration between our countries has been a stunning success. It is no coincidence that our free trade agreement signed in 1997 was Canada's first bilateral trade agreement in South America and only its second one outside of North America. It was the first ever bilateral free trade agreement signed by Chile. Canadian investment in Chile now is $13.7 billion. It was the largest source of new foreign direct investment in Chile during the past decade. Canadians across the country of all economic levels are invested in Chile, directly as shareholders in Canadian companies or through their investments in pension plans based in Canada. Our bilateral trade is $2.5 billion annually, some of which, Mr. President, can be explained by the fact that over the last 3 years, Canadians have consumed 27 million liters of Chilean wine every year. And very likely, Mr. President, while drinking our Carmagneres with our pololas, we are reading Nobel laureate Pablo Neruda's anthology of poems, which 40 years after his death was last year one of the top 10 bestsellers in Canada. And we hope soon, Mr. President, that in gratitude for the wine, the Chilean wine that we drink, that you'll consider sending to us El Pichichi Bam Bam Zamorano to train our national soccer team. Our relationship has been flexible and accommodating of new political and economic realities, due in part to the success and trust of our trading partnership. President Pinera has helped pave the way for Canada's entrance into the Trans-Pacific Partnership and as an observer into the Pacific Alliance. Under President Pinera's sound stewardship, Chile's GDP grew at an impressive average rate of about 6% over the past 3 years. His novel poverty reduction program was described by The Economist magazine as, quote, a thoughtful attempt to go beyond schemes elsewhere in the region. But over and above, Mr. President, Canadians maintain an unforgettable image from 2010 of your leadership, standing above the mine shaft, singing the national anthem, energizing the rescue of the 33 trapped miners. In his epic novel, 2666, contemporary Chilean author Roberto Bolaño said, quote, every 100 feet, the world changes. Your visit here today, Mr. President, reminds us that regardless of the changes ahead, our friendship will adapt and thrive in the years to come. I am honored now to invite President Pinera to address the Canadian Council for the Americas.
Mr. Oliver, Minister of Natural Resources, and dear friend, for me it's a great honor to share with you some reflections and some thoughts about the relationship between Canada and Chile, and also some words about my country. I would like to express my gratitude to Ken Frankel for his words and warm welcome, and start by saying that the relationship between Chile and Canada have always been extremely easy, and for a very simple reason. We share the same values. Even though we are separated by more than 10,000 kilometers, you are isolated from the world by the Arctic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. We are isolated from the world by the driest desert in the world, the Pacific Ocean, the Andes Mountains, and the Antarctic continent. We share the same values. Our commitment and your commitment to democracy, human rights, freedom, liberties, is something that have made everything very easy. We have just signed an agreement with your Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, by which we are strengthening and enlarging our free trade agreements, which was signed in 1997. and it was our first free trade agreement. And we are extremely grateful with Canada, because after that first one, we've been able to sign more than 62 free trade agreements with 62 countries around the world, including NAFTA, the US, the European Community, China, Japan, India, you name it. So Chile has become an extremely open economy. And for us, our commitment to democracy, to a free, open, competitive, and integrated economy are very, very strong, and I think that those are the main reasons why Chile has been able to progress. But in this meeting, we were able to sign with Prime Minister Harper many new agreements. It's not only free trade, it's not only investment. You know that our trade with Canada have more than tripled since we signed the agreement. But it started from such a low level that even though it has tripled, we still have so many things to do in order to really establish a close and strong trade relationship with Canada. But in terms of investment, Canada is now the third most important foreign investor in Chile, after the US and Canada. But in the last 10 years, it has become the first and most important foreign investor in Chile. And I would like to express here very openly and very frankly that Canadian investment are welcome in Chile. And that in Chile you can find a state of law, respect for foreign investment, and also a clear understanding that foreign investment will be treated exactly as it was local investment. We don't discriminate between foreigners and locals in terms of laws or in terms of investments. So we are looking forward for the best part of our relationship with Canada. And we were discussing this with Stephen Harper yesterday. And there are so many things that we can do. Both countries are mining countries. We have a lot to learn from your leadership in terms of technology, science, mining, education, renewable sources of energy. And those were exactly the issues and aspects that were incorporated to our agreement in order to strengthen our collaboration. With respect to Chile, when we took office 3 years ago, we knew that it was not going to be easy. First of all, because 10 days before we took office, Chile was hit by one of the most devastating earthquake and tsunami in the history of mankind. At that time, it was the 5th worst earthquake and tsunami. Then the Japanese were hit by another one, and ours became the 6th worst earthquake and tsunami in the history of mankind. We lost, in a few seconds or minutes, 1/3 of our hospitals, 1/3 of our schools, more than 200,000 homes. In a few minutes, we lost, in terms of infrastructure and wealth, something like 20% of our GNP. And that was, of course, a big challenge for the new government, because we had to undertake the challenge of reconstructing our country. On top of that, the Chilean economy was losing momentum. We were losing our capacity to grow. We were losing our capacity to create jobs. Our investment was going down, and therefore we were fully aware that we needed to start a kind of renaissance. And our commitment was to double our growth capacity and to create 1 million jobs, which is equivalent, in the case of Canada, to create almost 2.5 million jobs in 4 years, because of the difference in population. And after 3 years, we are not satisfied, because you can never be satisfied with the results, because there are so many things to solve, so many problems to solve, so many challenges to face. But in terms of results, the Chilean economy is growing at a pace of 6% per year on average, which doubles what was the pace of the last government. We have been able to create 828,000 jobs in 3 years. So we are very close to our commitment of 1 million jobs. Investment is going up from 21% to 27% of our GNP. And therefore, investment is growing much faster than consumption and much faster than our GNP. At the same time, we have been able to control our inflation rate. Last year was 1.5%. And to strengthen our macroeconomic equilibrium. Chile has a balanced budget, and therefore we are growing in solid basis because investment is going up, our macroeconomic equilibrium are very sound and very solid, and therefore we look forward because the main purpose or the main mission of our generation is to transform Chile in the first, hopefully not the only one, Latin American country able to overcome underdevelopment and defeat poverty within this decade. It's a project for this decade, not for the future, but for this decade. And if we keep going in the same direction and at the same path, we will achieve that goal. And for that, of course, we need to do many, many things. Chile has had to face two big challenges in the last 20 or 30 years. The first one was mentioned by Kenneth, was the transition from a military government to a democratic government. That happened 23 years ago. Normally, these transitions take place in the middle of economic chaos, social riots, and economic crisis. It was not the case of Chile. We reached an agreement, and therefore we were able to do the transition from a military government to a democratic government without having to suffer those evils. It was within a very peaceful framework. The economy didn't suffer, and we were able to do it wisely. And I think that that's something which is recognized worldwide. But now we have to face a second transition, which I think is more difficult than the old one, which is to transform Chile, which was the poorest Spanish colony, into a developed country without poverty. Right now, Chile has a per capita income in parity purchasing power of roughly $20,000, which is a little bit less than one half of what you have in Canada. And therefore, we are moving in the right direction. Chile is by now the country with the highest per capita income in Latin America, even though it was the poorest Spanish colony at that time. And that is not a coincidence. It's because I think that we are implementing the right public policies in terms of having not only a respected state and a modern state, but also we have been able to construct a very stable democracy, and we have embraced a market economy, a real open social market, competitive and integrated economy. And we will pursue in these lines. But that's not enough. We know that the old pillars of development, stable democracy, a market open integrated economy, and a modern state able to face its challenges, is not enough. We need to build the new pillars if we really want to become a developed country. What are those new pillars in which we are working very hard, and we are putting a lot of priorities and emphasis? First of all, we are undertaking a huge educational reform to increase the quality of our educational system at every level, pre-scholar level, at the basic and secondary level, and also at tertiary level, universities. For instance, we have increased our investment in education from $8.9 billion to more than $14 billion in the last 3 years. So we have increased our investment in education by more than 50% in 3 years. Actually, we are now investing almost $1 out of every $4 of public expenditure in education. That's something that we know that we have to do if we want to become a developed country. That's the first pillar. But there are other pillars. And some of them are very much related with what you do here at the Canadian Council for the Americas. Because the second thing is that we need to improve the equality of opportunity and defeat poverty. Because Latin Americans in general, and Chile also, are countries with a huge inequality in terms of income. And we need to reduce those inequalities and defeat poverty and guarantee everybody that they will have a life consistent with the dignity of being a human being, at the same time a life where they will have the opportunity to really exercise their talents and be able to do with their life what they think is right. The third pillar that we need to build is that we need to invest much more in science and technology. We were investing around 0.5%. Our target is to double that percentage within our government. So go from 0.5 to 1%, and we are moving in that direction. And I know that's not enough. We will need to go up to 2% at least. The average investment in science and technology of the OECD country is 2.5%. And the fourth pillar, I was mentioning education, income distribution and better equality of opportunity, science and technology. And the fourth one, of course, is to foster entrepreneurship, innovation, because those are the real renewable, non-exhaustible resources in which we have to rely. And we are working very much in building those four pillars. And if we keep going in this direction, if we keep growing at 6% per year, which has been the average of the last 3 years, if we keep strengthening investment and productivity and science and technology and also fostering entrepreneurship and innovation, I'm convinced that Chile will be able to become the first Latin American country able to overcome underdevelopment and at the same time to defeat poverty. And with Canada, we share many things, not only principles and values. We are part of the OECD together with Canada. We are working together in the Trans-Pacific Partnership that may become the largest free trade zone in the world. We are also very happy because Canada is an observer member of the Pacific Alliance, which we have created with Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile. The Pacific Alliance represents more than 50% of Latin American trade, and it represents something around 1/3 of the Latin American GNP. But the most important thing that we share the same views. So we have been able to create in a very short period of time a free trade zone between these four countries. We have just agreed to liberalize tariffs and to reduce tariffs to zero for more than 90% of our trade, and it will go all the way to 100% in a very short period of time. But it's not only trade, it's also investments, it's also free movement of capitals, integration of our financial markets, free movement of people, and we are joining forces to be able to take advantage of all the opportunities that this new world is putting in face of us. I'm convinced that this new society of knowledge and information will be extremely generous with those countries that want to take the challenge, and may be indifferent and even cruel with those societies that just want to see as it passes away. And we have made a decision. We arrived late to the Industrial Revolution, and that's why we are an underdeveloped country. We won't arrive late to this new revolution, which is the revolution of the society of technology and information. And that's another area where we can collaborate a lot with Canada, because Canada is a small country in terms of population, a huge country in terms of territories, of course, but it's a big country in terms of leadership. Even though it has only 34 million people, you have been able to create a strong leadership in terms of science, technology, innovation, and we appreciate that. And that's why we were discussing with your Governor General the possibility of strengthening the strategic alliance between your university sector and our university sector, and that's something that we are working on. For all those reasons, I'm convinced that even though we have done a lot of things with Canada, the best of the relationship between Chile and Canada is yet to come, and it is our responsibility to build those relationships. Therefore, I would like to emphasize once again that Canadian investment are very welcome in Chile, not only because you provide financial resources. Actually, we don't need that. We have foreign savings and we have access to international markets. What we really need is your leadership, your technology, your innovation capacity, your knowledge, because in that way, this strategic alliance will be good for Canada and Chile. And since there are so many technological companies, Canadian companies investing in Chile, I would like to express my deep gratitude and also to re-emphasize that Canadian investment are very welcome in Chile. I would like to end this word by saying that I'm ready to take all the questions that you might want to ask, even tough questions, but you have to take the risk of getting tough answers too. Et je voudrais finir ces mots parce que la première langue que j'ai appris a été le français à l'école. Alors, je veux dire, vive le Canada, vive le Chili, et je suis ici pour répondre à vos questions. Merci.